What a week. As everyone and their mother knows by this point, Omid Scobie released his newest royal biography entitled Endgame, documenting the firm's final strategies in their quest to keep the monarchy together after the death of the Queen and the departure of Harry and Meghan. I've been in the process of reading the book, but I don't have my physical copy yet, so I've been listening to the audiobook on Spotify. I'm planning to give a full review once I finish the book and have a physical copy on my YouTube channel, but I thought I'd bring up a few tidbits that I really appreciated from the book from my reading so far. The first thing is that I appreciate that Scobie noted the conservatism of the monarchist institution and how that conservatism has in some ways turned into courting a reactionary base, including using racism and harkening back to their colonial past as a tool for their continued power. His insights into this made me feel like everything I've been saying since I started my YouTube channel last year has made sense, so thank you, Omid. I no longer feel crazy. I know I nor Omid are the first people to realize that the royal family is racist, duh. But it's a breath of fresh air when a royal commentator brings up a gigantic problem with upholding this institution into the 21st century, one who is also the head of a commonwealth full of people of color. And as someone who has read a lot of crazy royal biographies, you don't understand how rare that can be. Second, one thing I've been highlighting recently, especially on TikTok, is how the royal family has been using Diana's legacy, but only the parts that benefit them to manipulate the public's memory of her. This is a picture of an example that Omid actually gives in the book of Kensington Palace's exhibition on Diana called Diana, a fashion icon or fashion legacy, something like that. He discusses in one chapter how they are more than willing to use her glamour, for example, to market replicas of her jewelry or give nods to her fashion in their engagements, but have worked as well to use the media to change the narrative around her unhappy life and the role that other royals played in that tragedy, as well as banning her BBC interview where she candidly expressed her struggles. He also notes that it's the interview in which she remarked that Charles would not be fit to be king. I pretty much 100% agree with Scobie's interpretation. Sympathetic royal biographers often had tried to change Diana's story into that of a shrill and paranoid woman whose struggles were all in her head, not exacerbated by the horrible treatment by her family. But they have also, time and time again, had to completely give up on trying to completely denigrate her character, since she is still to date one of the most popular members of the family, even in death. So how they treat her memory in death is very telling in that they only want to use the parts of her image that allow the monarchy grift to continue. Third, Scobie's book doesn't shy away from showing the complete entanglement between the royals, the media, and the government. I've talked extensively about how discussions of the royal family, especially their personal life, get siloed into drama and gossip because the stories related to the royal family are often marketed towards women. When it's a politician, it's news. When it's the royal family, it's gossip. But it allows for the royals to avoid any real scrutiny from the public in relation to their governmental roles and the former government officials they employ. For example, hey, this guy here, Jean-Christophe Gray, former official spokesperson to David Cameron, and now, though not for long, the private secretary for Prince William. Hey, isn't it interesting? I thought that David Cameron just got a life peerage from King Charles. And this guy that worked for David Cameron also works for Prince William? Wow, it's such a small world, isn't it? Scobie gives great descriptions of the family's corruption, especially Charles, but even outside of the obvious corruption with cash for honors, these relationships are still important to understand and disentangle. Scobie's book was a breath of fresh air, where the family's connections to government and politics of the era are not divorced from their decisions. They have hired people from the conservative government. They have had numerous conversations with the conservatives during their 13-year reign in Britain. They have capitalized on the public's growing xenophobia and open racism in much the same way as the conservative government has. And royal commentary cannot and should not shy away from that. What's made me most happy, though, is that Scobie's book, despite obviously the media trying their darndest to spin it in a million circles to distort the message of the text, is that at least it's getting some modicum of attention. even if sometimes it's not great attention. I'm hoping that it gets more people interested in digging more into this discussion and hopefully helps educate others more as to how this whole royal family operates. Maybe others will get invested in seeing this endgame play out in the public's favor, not the monarchy's. I can't wait to finish this book and give my full review. Let me know what's been your favorite part of this book in the comments. Since Omid Scobie's Endgame has been out for a couple weeks, and I've just finished listening to the audiobook, I'm still waiting for my physical copy to arrive, I thought it would be interesting to have a look at some of the book reviews that have come out for Endgame. I'm really frustrated by the tone of some of these articles. We're going to start with this op-ed from the BBC entitled Omid Scobie Royal Book, More Like Action Replay Than Endgame by Sean Coughlin. And what really bothers me about these book reviews is that instead of actually engaging with what's in the book, they're instead trying to downplay Omid's arguments in the book and make them sound ludicrous without actually engaging with the arguments that he's presenting. Even starting with this opening paragraph, it ends with the line, "It's called Endgame, but much of it feels more like action replay." What does that have to do with the title Endgame? It's pretty clear from the text what Endgame is referring to, the endgame strategies of the people in the monarchy and the royal family as they navigate having to deal with losing the queen, the major part of the monarchical institution that was keeping everything together. So I don't understand what's this idea. It's called Endgame, but it feels like an action replay. It's like he's not understanding why it's called Endgame in the first place. Moving to the rest of the body of the text, Coughlin writes, but with its relentlessly recriminatory tone, it's often more mope opera than soap opera. What interests me about this line is the idea of the soap opera is something that the royal family has been working on creating with their marketing for a long time, creating a soap opera, a spectacle for people to watch and read about in tabloids. So it's interesting that he's like, this isn't a real soap opera, this is a mope opera. It's like, why would Omid want to play into that game of the soap opera that only benefits the royal family? I just don't understand this critique. The slightly 2D world where maligned palace officials seem to be permanently conspiring with journalists. Yeah, that's what it's about because that's what the royal family does most of the time. You can't complain about Omid Scobie's book being about the palace coordinating with journalists when that's what they do all day. I also love this paragraph up here, which is basically claiming that Prince Harry's Spare is like so much more action-oriented than Endgame. I don't see why they would even make that comparison because it's not like people liked, you know, Prince Harry's Spare for all of its action and stuff like that. Like, it was pretty widely criticized for all of these things that are listed. The title references a chess game, but it's a highly one-sided match. All attack and not much defense. My question is, defense of what? What is Omid Scobie supposed to be defending in this chess match? That's not even what he's really referring to when he's talking about this endgame of the chess match. He's talking about the monarchy versus like this growing Republican sentiment. What defense is Omid Scobie supposed to be giving here? And what is the attack about? He's not attacking anybody. He's just describing what he believes are the strategies of the different members of the royal family to continue the institution and to protect their own interests within the family and their own images and reputations. I don't understand what Coughlin is trying to critique here. He's basically saying that he doesn't like this book because it's not full of these big revelations and bombshells, and it seems to attack the family, by which he means it's critical of the royal family members. Like, that's not right. I also don't like this tactic of saying something that's discussed in the book and claiming that the book claims it's a bombshell when nobody's claiming it's a bombshell except for the writer, in this case Coughlin. Like we get up here, but when one of the shocking revelations is that Catherine was accused of being coachable, you have to think there are probably worse things to be called. No one's saying that that's a bombshell, except you. Instead of engaging with this idea as to whether or not Catherine is perpetuating the monarchy through being coached into this specific way of being, and how other people aren't allowed to just like live their life within the family authentically. Like, what are we talking about here? I don't even understand what the critique is, other than to say this is supposedly a bombshell, but it's not. But nobody's claiming it is. Coughlin also critiques the book for seeming to be, quote, highly sympathetic of Harry and Meghan, which is Omid Scobie's right if he believes that they're more sympathetic players in this situation. But that's not a critique of the book. Like, that might be your own personal problems if you believe Harry and Meghan are evil or whatever. But where's the actual critique of the arguments in the book? We get an example here where he says, quote, for instance, on the row about Prince Harry's security and losing his home at Frogmore Cottage, the book says, quote, staying on the Windsor estate was the Sussex family's only true safe option when visiting the United Kingdom, as the grounds are surrounded by armed guards. Is it really the only safe place in the entire country? Yes? What the frick are you talking about? Yes. You're talking about royal family members that represent symbolically for terrorists or for other right-wing extremists as targets for terrorism and harassment. People who need highly specialized security and teams to help keep them safe. Yes, that's the entire point. This is such a weak argument against Omid's claims that the family has treated them poorly by denying them security in Harry's home country. We also get a great damned if he does, damned if he doesn't, because he mentions that in the book, the royal racists were not named, and he claims, quote, it would be a real bombshell if he had. But as we've seen from everything that's come out in the news recently about the Dutch translation actually naming them, people don't want them named. And Omid has caught a lot of flack for these names being revealed in the Dutch translation, even though it seems like he didn't have anything to do with that mix-up. So you can't critique Omid for not naming these royal racists in one breath, and then later when they do get revealed, then Omid has to deal with all the flack that he, quote-unquote, revealed these royal racists. Coughlin admits that a lot of the book touches on the ideas that the monarchy is struggling to remain relevant and engaging and interesting for the under 50 crowd. But this paragraph up here and this paragraph down here don't seem to mesh at all. I don't even understand what Coughlin is trying to say. The age of deference is gone, and there's an expectation that the monarchy will show its workings, particularly on issues such as its finances. But even among those skeptical about the monarchy, the publicity surrounding the book reflects the fascination for these royal dramas, particularly anything to do with Prince Harry and Meghan. What does the royal family should be more transparent about its finances have to do with the fact that there are people interested in reading about Harry and Meghan? What do these two things have to do with each other? Why are they in two paragraphs connected with a but? Can you not be skeptical of the monarchy and also interested in hearing about Harry and Meghan? And with no self-awareness to say that websites are bulging with stories about Harry and Meghan because they know people will click to read more. That's a critique of journalists. That's not a critique of Harry and Meghan. Maybe journalists should stop being so obsessed with them and trying to put their names into random tabloid fodder for clicks so that they can earn money. That sounds like something that Omid is trying to critique in his book, rather than a critique of the book. He claims that the book must already be out of date because there have been olive branches and reconciliations with a birthday phone call to the king, and the story has, quote, moved on. If you think one phone call to the king is enough to dismiss all of the arguments of Endgame about the long-term effects of the Queen's passing, Harry and Meghan leaving, and an uncertain future for what King William and Queen Catherine is going to look like. I don't know what the hell you've been reading, because there's a lot more in the book than whether or not Harry and Meghan are going to reconcile with their family. King Charles spending his birthday going to food banks has nothing to do about whether or not there's a growing Republican sentiment that will call into question the monarchy and its connection to the government and to the press. To end on this note, the endgame of the title suggests an institution that's in serious trouble, but this won't be the book to sink it. I doubt that was Omid's intention with this book, was to try to sink the monarchy. He was just reporting facts.